Hello, my friends over on TikTok. How are you guys doing today? How about we start our lesson by putting our intro? Hello, everybody. My name is Rodgon. I'm an artist, a teacher, a mentor, designer, cartoonist, illustrator, graphic designer, marketer, advertiser, and everything in between. And today we are going to be drawing something together. Welcome to a free art lesson. So let's talk a little bit about what we talked about yesterday and what we talked about earlier today on Instagram. Because I've been doing like a little pre-stream on Instagram lately because, I feel like I'm neglecting the people over on Instagram. So they get a little bit of a lesson as well there as well and a recap. So if you guys feel like coming over and watching those over there, that'd be great. If you're not, that's fine. Don't worry about it. But let's talk about what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, I was telling you guys that I'm developing a really weird thing where if I touch my phone, it burns. So I looked it up and it's a early signs of carpal tunnel. So that is not a good sign for good old Rod, right? So that is not good. But we will deal with that as it comes along. I'll go check it out, blah, 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 blah. I hate doctors, so, odds are I'll just do I'll just work through the pain. And then we'll talk a little bit about what you guys needed to be consistent on social media. Then we talked a little bit about body structure and how to learn how to draw the body in different ways. These might look the same in different situations, but they all started differently. For example, we had the balloon and stick approach for this one, which involves thinking of your body like a balloon that's attached to a little log. And that is how you come up with your body parts. Okay, so the other one is going to be just a beanbag. No, that wasn't the beanbag. Which one was this one? No, that was just a variation of the balloon. Then we had the hearts one. The hearts one is just drawing two shapes that are roughly like hearts. And you have your collarbone. You have your rib cage, your belly button, your hip bones, and you have your little stumps for your legs. So you guys can use that sort of body structure as well. Or you guys can use a little beanbag method as well. Just by drawing a beanbag, you guys can come up with a nice little body structure really quickly. So whichever way you approach it, I was just showing you guys, there are a couple examples of how you guys can visualize your things like that. Okay, so that's what we were talking about yesterday. And then we were talking about how to see this upper part of the actual rib cage. And as you guys can see it very easily like an eye. And if you guys want to add muscles to it, you just add an eyelid to it. And this is literally how I come up with that body part. And it works so good, so good. Like if you have your face, right, and you're trying to figure out where you're going to draw your body, draw an eye. And then that gives you your collarbone. It gives you your back muscles. It gives you the connection to your shoulders. It gives you your rib cage. It gives you everything. Everything! So it's a very cool measurement to know. So draw an eye, and that's the three parts of your neck. That is the cylinder of your neck and your neck muscles. And if you draw a little teardrop in the front, you get your bone for your collarbone. Ta-da! So that's what we talked about yesterday, and I was explaining to you guys that methodology of how to work that. So now we get to go into a new lesson. What should we learn today, my friends? What should we do? While we decide what we are going to be doing, I need you guys to do a favor for me. You guys already know what I'm going to ask, so might as well start doing it. Bam. You guys need to like and share my stream so that you guys can help me while I help you. I have all these on YouTube. So if you guys want to go on YouTube, I have over 400 videos now, I think. Draw furry. Okay, so I'm going to draw something furry. I'm not going to draw a furry. I'm just going to draw something furry. With their furry hands. And give them like horns. So, not a furry, but I'll draw something furry. Some people have like little dolls to give you some idea. What? What are you talking about? No, that's crazy. What about knees? You know what? Yeah, let's talk about legs. How about that? Let's just talk about legs in general. I think legs in general would be a good theme today. I feel good. I was talking about hip bones earlier today. So let's talk about legs. And let's figure out what legs do and how to draw them better. So if we can get, let's see, hold on. Today's goal, before we start our lesson, and meanwhile, I'm going to draw cool things, but our goal for today will be to get to 7,000 hearts. And we need at least, I don't know, let's say 80 shares. So once we get to those numbers, we will start our lesson. But until then, I'm going to draw cool legs for you guys to like tease you with the idea of wanting to learn and share and help. So I'm going to just draw legs. And I'm going to show you guys the possibilities with what I'm going to teach you guys today. So by learning how to draw the hip bones, how I'm going to teach you guys today, you guys will be able to essentially draw your poses in any way you guys feel like drawing. It's going to be no more difficult to draw any of these poses than drawing a simple L shape or a beanbag. If you guys practice how to draw this shape and learn how to overlap these little lines properly, you guys can draw legs relatively easy. Okay, learning how to draw these elements is going to help you, but understanding how it connects to your actual body is the key. That is the secret right here. Learning how to visualize that. Oh, it's a leg. So if you're like drawing a character, that's what it is. A leg. Is this live going to go live on YouTube? Yes. All of these are going to go live on YouTube. So we have already crushed this. So yay. Woohoo. You guys have crushed the likes. Now I need you guys to do the shares. Once we get to the share number, we can start our lesson on legs. So legs are actually very simple. It's just a matter of being able to unlearn the things that we have learned before and understand things for what they are as opposed to what they want them to be. So a lot of people have issues drawing legs because they overcomplicate them or they over-sexualize them. Like, yes, that is a thing. Like, people think that legs are sexier than they actually like are in some instances. So people add a lot of curvature to things that don't necessarily need curvature, thinking that they need that to be able to generate like really cool, like curvy legs. But they do this without understanding what's going on underneath. So they don't understand how the bones work, right? They just add volume to your design. So something a little bit more accurate would be along the lines of this. Okay, so understanding what you're drawing and the shapes that you're supposed to be drawing is going to be a very core value to that. Okay, we have met the lies. Woohoo! All right, so let's go on to our lesson. Today it's going to be legs. Thank you so much for the shares and the support, everybody. You guys are awesome. So let's go into our lesson today. Legs. Why are they hard? So, the reason that legs are normally hard for people is because legs have a lot of really subtle elements to them, right? They have subtlety beyond like belief. Like every little curvature that you draw on your leg is normally a very subtle line, and it's something that you need to keep in mind because otherwise it throws off the entirety of the leg. So that's why people find it really hard, because of the subtlety that it takes, okay? The same thing happens with female figures. So in general, when you're drawing like a pin-up or something like that, the reason that it's harder to draw a female figure in general than it is to draw a male figure is because of those subtle curvatures that they have. So if you have subtle like angles and curvatures, you need to pay attention to the anatomy behind that, because that is what's causing those issues. In this case, the only difference between these two, imagining that they both have the same type of rib cage, okay, is going to be the next things. The hip bones are going to be wider on a woman than they are on a man. That is a very generalization. So it's just for illustrative purposes only. Yes, not all women have small hips. Not all women have big hips. Not all men have small hips. It's not about the exceptions. We're talking about generalities. Okay, so just for illustrative purposes, so you guys know the difference between a big hip bone person and a small hip bone person, that is essentially what's going on. Okay, the only difference is the hip bones are bigger, and therefore it contours differently around the body. Now, the legs connect to the hip bone, and whatever you draw coming out of this hole is going to become the leg. Whatever connects from the top or the sides to the edge of this little circle is going to be your leg, regardless of whatever shape you draw. Okay? You can draw noodly legs if you want, and it's going to look right because it's coming from that right place. You can draw anatomically correct legs, and it's going to look right because it's coming from that same place. So from there, that's where everything comes to life. Right? It's not where you draw the muscles. It's not how you connect the tissue and how you overlap the lines. Yes, that's going to play a role, but learning how to connect it to the body, that is what makes your poses believable. That's what makes your body and your eyes think that you're drawing the right thing. Because, like I said, regardless of you drawing something like little chibi elephant legs or whatever, little animal legs, right, or drawing a full-length leg, as long as you're drawing it from that one place, it's going to look like a foot or like a leg. So it's coming from this one place. And this hip bone area is incredibly easy to draw. Incredibly easy. It's like the easiest body part that you guys can draw, because it's honestly just a cylinder, and you move the bottom points in a little bit to angle it in. That is your shape for your hip bones. So, if that's the angle of your hip bones, what happens with that angle? Like, let's say, what if we draw it differently? Well, at this angle, our legs come down at this angle for non-wide hip people. And if you have hips, normally the hip width gets added here because of the bone, right? Our bone is pushing out of this section. This is how our bone works coming out of our actual hip. So for little hip people, so we'll call it little hips. Instead of just calling a male and female, I'm just going to call little hips and big hips. So little hip people don't really have much of pronunciation here, right? But big hip people have a lot of differentiation here. This hip goes out more, therefore it creates volume. Even though they're both connecting to the same place, you guys can tell that having that bone push out a little bit creates a lot more volume. So that is literally the difference. That's the only difference. And you can represent this by just making this little cylinder bigger or smaller. So if you guys have a little cylinder for your hips, you're going to have normal hips. If you're going to have a little hip for the bottom, you're going to get a more tapered look. And as you change the size of them, you're going to see the difference as to what happens with your designs. Okay, so you'll start seeing that just changing the hip bone size changes the way that your body contours. So this goes from little hips to big hips. So, and that's just by changing the hip bone. Now you also have this area for the chest, which can also change in size, and it would change it, but we're not talking about body. We're not talking about the upper body right now. We're talking about legs. So that is going on with your hip bones. We simplify it by simply drawing a cylinder. Okay. And these two are pointing forward, right? So if this is the forward position, what does the back look like? Well, it's the same thing, only we don't see those holes. We just see the back. Okay, the holes are in the front. This is what you could consider your booty, like your booty line or whatever. So when you're drawing from behind, that could be your booty line. Okay, that's where your booty is. So from the front, you see these little gaps, and that's where your crotch is. Okay, so from the front, you see these little holes. From the back, you don't. Some people's knees come together and the lower legs. Okay, so hold on. I'm gonna talk to you guys through like that as well. We got to talk about the hip bones first, right? We got to understand the first part of it. We got to find the connection point first, and then we're gonna talk about how everything interconnects from that point on. So working from the up down is essentially how you guys can learn how to draw the entire body. Like the way that so I was talking about having a new course for 21 Draw, right? I don't know if I mentioned to you guys yet, but I'm gonna have a new course for 21 Draw. So they asked me to do a simple basic anatomy course for people, like very beginning level anatomy course. So I'm going to introduce my system of drawing head to toe. And we were talking a little bit on Instagram about like what I'm going to be pinpointing and how I'm going to combine them. And we narrowed it down to 6 modules. So we're going to, in 6 modules, about 1 hour each, I will explain everything about the human body. So when this comes out, within 6 hours, you guys will be better artists. That's really cool. So let's go back to our legs. So now that we understand the hip bone, so this is the hip bone. Okay, so our hip bone is a cylinder, which we take these bottom points and we move them in, creating this. So that's kind of cool. So that's our hip bone. So our hip bone, our legs connect to our hip bone. Essentially, any shape that you draw coming out of these legs is going to become a leg. So you can push that into different perspectives really easy. If you feel like doing this first, like if you have to work through little nubbies so you can understand the perspective of your thighs going into one direction or the other, do this like this. Like, don't draw the whole leg. Just draw in sections. If you can do this, practice with your hip bones. Like, practice drawing just these little hip bones and then draw nubbies, like little cylinders coming out from those little stubs. That should be easy enough to practice with, right? Like, if you draw this, you can probably draw two little cylinders coming out of there and distinguish their perspective, right? So once you get good at that and you get good at drawing those in different ways of like pointing your bodies, like these little cylinders pointing in different directions, right? Once you get good at that, all that needs to be done is just extend them. And then you have the thigh. So just get better at extending that same shape a little bit more, and you have yourself your thigh. Okay, so get used to first, get used to drawing this shape. Second, get used to drawing little cylinders coming out of that shape in different views. Okay, get used to drawing the perspective lines of said cylinders. So you guys can get used to how it comes out of the actual little hip bone. And then little by little, you'll be able to draw longer shapes coming out of there. And then when you combine that with another of those, that exact shape, that another one, going again in whatever perspective you need it, now you have your overlapping lines you need for your legs. But you think about it in steps instead of thinking about it as one big element. So as you're drawing, draw your hip bones, draw your little cylinders coming out, think about it as small sections, and then expand them once you find that perspective. And then add another one like this, exactly the same shape, overlapping the bottom. And you have drawn all the way to your ankles. So now you have your hip bones, you have your thigh as a big little teardrop, and then you have your calf as a big little teardrop that overlaps it. And then all you got to do for your legs is draw them going in whichever direction you feel like drawing them. That's the easiest way that you guys can learn how to map out your legs. Now, let me explain another simple way that you guys can do this, because sometimes this becomes a little complex for people. So another way that you guys can do it is by drawing, again, hearts. So let's draw an upside down heart for the bottom of the body. So this is gonna be the rib cage, the top of the rib cage. Then we're gonna have our hip bones going around. Somewhere around here we have our belly button. And then from here, that gives us our little hip bones. From there, our legs come out, just like in the other one. They come out of our hip bones, and we have another way to come up with legs. A heart. Think about this as your crotch area. Think about this as your rib cage. In between these, you have your belly button. And then you just draw little circles to come up with your hip bones. From there, the width of your hip is already given by the heart. So if you don't want that wide of a hip, just bring it in. But if you want like a nice little curvy one, the heart serves a purpose and it gives you that little angle that you need. Now, if you just draw another heart underneath, you have a perfect spacing for your thighs and your calves. So that's another way that you guys can see it. randomly draws Mickey Mouse. Does that look like Mickey Mouse? It kind of does. Hands, huh? Could you show the perspective? So let's see. If I'm gonna be walking, if I'm gonna be walking, I'm gonna have my hip bones, and they're gonna be slightly angled, right? Because I don't like drawing a little flat pose. I'm gonna draw my first leg coming forward like a cylinder. I'm gonna draw my leg going back like a cylinder. So now, just like that, I have a front leg, a back leg, and I have my little overlap. So now I just have to draw this shape. This cylinder on the bottom has perspective, right? It has this little cylinder. If I want to come up with the foot that's at this angle, I just expand that. I just take that one perspective line and I just make it bigger. And now I have the bottom of my foot. I give 2 points on my shoe, and then I just arch a line on top of it to match whatever depth I want from my shoe. Now I have this shoe. I'm going to map the other one. So if this is the bottom of my leg, this is the bottom perspective of my leg, I can expand that. I can make that longer and come up with how my foot's going to touch the ground. And that is why we learn perspective. That's why we learn perspective, guys, so you can actually do that. So if you guys are wondering why it's so important to learn perspective, that's why it is. So someone asked, do you ever forget to draw something, and how do you deal with that? Well, if I ever forget to draw something, I just look it up. So I watch reference. I just refine myself. I just look up the information again so that I can teach myself how to draw it again, and then I draw it. So it's not like a matter of knowledge is not just something that just goes away though. Once you understand something, once you actually take the time to understand something, it becomes like second nature after you do it enough. So now at one point you're going to be able to break these out and just make random shapes and be able to come up with your own styling for legs. Now, I wouldn't recommend you try to find your own style for appendages until you actually understand how to draw appendages, and otherwise you're going to be stuck drawing in proper anatomy and just justifying that as your style for a very long time. And you're going to come to the realization too late in your career that you maybe have not ever been drawing in actual knowledge. You've just been drawing through style so much that it just became second nature. Slow down. I'm ignoring the fact I lost all my drawing skills. Sorry. So crisscross. Somebody asked for crisscross legs. So let's draw our hip bones. We're going to draw our cylinders coming out. So if we're crisscrossing our legs, our first thing that's happening is our hip bones are going out wide. Right? So our hip bones, no taking knives. Hip bones are going out wide, and then they're coming back in a crisscross. So I'm going to draw a straight line from my thighs down, and then I'm going to draw my foot at the end of that little stick. And then this stick is my bone. This is my bone that leads to my ankle, right? So this is the easiest representation of that I could do. A little cylinder that goes down. And then my calf muscle wraps around this the same way that we expanded things. So if our cylinder from our thigh muscle is coming down, and we have our calf muscle right here, this is our bone that leads directly to our ankle. I have to find the perspective lines for this and then just expand them going back. Once I expand those lines going back, that gives me my perfect shape for my calves. Because it's just a muscle that wraps around the back of that bone. So you draw your bone, figure out your perspective, expand those lines back and then connect it to behind the thigh. And you will always have perfect calf muscles. So when it comes down to the situation, we have this, and then we're going to have the bone that wraps, the muscle that wraps around the back and circles around back to our thigh. I'm going to do the same thing for this side. We got to decide which foot is going to go first. I'll draw this one on top. There you go. And that's how you would draw a crisscross leg. So understanding legs is normally hard because we don't normally know how to connect it to our bodies. So once we understand the connection to the bodies in the way of our hip bone, once you understand this connection point right here, then it becomes infinitely easier. Whenever you're drawing your crutch, remember this, okay? You can draw underwear like tighty-whities or a thong and get perfect placement for your things. All you got to do is draw a shape and give it tighty-whities, and you have a perfect placement for your hip bones, okay? That is going to be the case anytime. You can draw a thong too if you prefer drawing thongs over tighty-whities, but that's all you really need to know to draw the legs in the right place, okay? Give whatever shape you're going to draw your body, tighty-whities. You're good. Another way of seeing it is draw your shape and draw a heart that leads to where the butt would be. That's going to give you two little holes, and it's going to give you your hip bones. Okay, that's another way that you guys can draw it. And this also gives you the rib cage too. So that's a cool one. I like that. But that's another way that you guys can do it. And then let's move on to the thighs. Okay, so let's move on to the thighs. The thighs are actually really easy. The thighs, whenever you come to the thighs, let's go thighs. The thighs will be the upper part of the leg right here. So what are you looking at when you are looking at this section right here? Okay, well, first of all, this is going to incorporate your kneecap. So your kneecap is going to be on the bottom of this. It's going to be part of this big shape. So the bottom part of it is going to be your kneecap. Then here, you're going to have a muscle that gets split by your kneecap in half. And then you're going to have muscles that wrap around your kneecap. So this is essentially what's going on within this muscle. There's a bunch of muscles and stuff like that that are happening, right? There's a bunch of things that are happening. But we're going to simplify this into a simple teardrop that connects with our circle for our hip bone. Now, remember, we're drawing individual muscles. So if you want to draw the butt goes behind here. Okay, the booty goes on top of the leg. It's not part of the leg. It's on top of the leg. Just keep that in mind whenever we're drawing, in case you guys think that we're only drawing like, people with no butts. Essentially, we're drawing over the bone structure. And when you're drawing your bone structure, you're normally not including things like the butt until later. That is added later. Okay, that way you can give them kadung-kadungs, or you can give them no booty or whatever, right? It's up to you at that point. So, teardrop for the thigh. The teardrop includes my kneecap, and it includes all the muscles included. The teardrop is going to have one line dividing it from the top of the hip line to the kneecap. Now, let's explain that a little more because that's going to be a little complex for people. You don't just split this in half. So you have your thigh coming out of there, right? You're going to take the top of your kneecap, of your thigh, or your thigh hole, and you're going to draw that to a little indicator of your kneecap. And that is going to be the middle of your thigh. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because the thigh is not necessarily just a cylinder. It's more like a little stepping stone. Like it goes up in an angle, and then it comes down in a curve. So one side is a little bit straighter and the other side is curved. So I like to differentiate it by the middle right there. That way I can have two different sections to play around if I want to add muscles or anything like that as well, because the muscles essentially just rotate around here, so I can add volume to each one of these sections if I need to. So that is why I keep it as a nice little teardrop with a line in the middle. This little line is going to continue down. Okay, you're going to draw that line, you're going to follow it down, and that's going to be the bone that leads to your ankles. Okay, so you're going to continue this line down all the way to your ankle. Your ankle is going to connect to your foot in the way kind of like the rib cage does. So your ankle kind of has this sort of feel to it, right? It kind of feels like your foot fits right inside of there. Okay, so if you think about that like the rib cage, and just think about it like a bone going down to a little rib cage, it becomes easier to just tuck your foot in inside of there. Straight line into a little rib cage, tuck my foot in there, and then a little triangle comes out. Cool. So now I have my calf, I have my kneecap, and all because I knew how to draw a line going from the top of my thigh down to my kneecap, down to my ankle. Now I find my perspective lines for these, and then I draw them a little bit bigger towards the back so I can come up with my calf. We go around the perspective lines of my calf, just make it bigger towards the back, and connect it behind my thigh. And I got myself calves. Cool. So now that we know roughly how to draw the thigh is really easy. Like even when you're drawing it from the side, like let's draw thighs from the side, front, and side view. So we're going to have front view. Our front view is just going to be our thigh pointing forward, and we split it in half from the top. Cool. So that's going to be our thigh from the front. Draw our calves too. Then we're going to draw a 3/4. So 3/4, you start seeing a little bit of the booty. But like I said, we don't draw the booty until after. So we're going to draw our teardrop. We're going to draw a teardrop. We're going to overlap our teardrop from behind, or come up with our straight line and come up with our perspective lines and connect it behind. Whichever way you guys prefer. I like the little teardrop just because it's easier. So that is how you see it. And then you add your booty behind. So when you're drawing this, you would have these little indicators. That is what you would be simplifying to. See how the leg connects into the hip bone and creates a little butt? That is essentially what you guys are simplifying that. So now let's draw one in complete perspective. So complete perspective would mean that my hip bones is in the front. So it would be something along the lines of this. And then we have a butt in the back. So the top thigh overlaps. The top will always be in front of the bottom one. So top first, thigh second. So you got that little overlap. And when you're drawing things in like extreme perspectives, right? If you're like looking at it upside down, and the person is like running, it still works. So this is just a nice, easy technique that you guys can use to be able to start getting used to drawing poses a little bit easier. It makes it easy to think about the leg as just two overlapping shapes that are the same shape. And all I got to do is change the size of them to make them into a completely different leg position. Okay? I can take these elements and move them around as much as I want simply because it's just two overlapping teardrops. But the trick is to understand how they connect. If you don't understand how they connect, that's where you lose it. If you overlap them like this, that's how it works. If you draw your legs like this, it's not going to work because it doesn't give you that overlapping line. Essentially gives you your kneecap and your thigh overlap. So overlapping it a little bit allows you to just draw legs really quickly in any direction you feel like. But the key is to understand how they connect. If you, like I said, if you don't understand that, it becomes a little bit harder. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Teardrop into a teardrop, overlap the right lines, and you have a leg. So now let's move on to the bottom part of the leg, which is the foot. And the foot in itself is not necessarily very hard. It's like a hand. So the foot in itself is a hand. Okay? The foot has a flat side of it. It has fingers. And it has a connection to your ankle in the way of like this. Okay? What is the difference between that and just adding a thumb and adding your hand? Like longer fingers. There's not much difference at all. No, if it's lagging, it's my internet. It's not your internet. I've been having a little bit of issues with the internet lately. So it's not you guys. It's me. So essentially your foot, if you know how to draw hands, if you learn how to draw hands, your foot is essentially a thumbless, five-fingered hand. That's all it is. So if you think about it like that, it might be a little bit easier for you to think about it. So feet are essentially triangles coming out of a cylinder. So if you draw your cylinder, you draw the bottom part of your cylinder, like your perspective line up, connect to your top, and then you have all the volume you need. Like that is essentially all you really need to do. So if you want to simplify it to the point of extremes, it's a cylinder. Take that bottom perspective of that cylinder, expand it, and then connect it to the midline of your ankle. And you have yourself a foot. Like that is the easiest way that you guys can do that. So again, let's do another one. Draw a midline and then draw the bottom perspective of your cylinder. Follow that up a little bit, make it bigger so you have that exact shape of your foot. Connect that with your foot and then give it volume. That's another way that you guys can do it. It becomes really easy as well. Bottom perspective of my cylinder, make that expanded, connected to the top side of my foot, and then give it volume. Boom! Shakalaka laka laka. Yeah, so once you get better at that, like whenever you learn and you like adjust for anatomy, Like if you're going to be drawing like naked feet, you need to learn a little bit more about what your actual feet have, right? Like the little curvatures and stuff like that. But this also matches up with your hand. Like this matches perfectly with your hand. When you have your hand, right? What do you think the little bumps on your hand are? Like these little bumps that you find like on your hand, what do you think they are? I'll let you guys answer in the chat. What do you guys? They're muscles. Nope. These are not muscles. They're the knuckles. Yes. So the little bump that you see right here for your hand, that's your knuckles. That's the bone. That's not muscle. That's touch it. It's hard, right? It's literally hard. It has rough skin because it's your hand, but it's hard. So that's your knuckle. The same thing happens with your foot. So your foot has a knuckle bump. Right in front of your feet. So that's one of the bumps. So the first bump is your knuckles literally being there. And then the second bump is your ankle hitting the ground, like the cylinder hitting the ground. So all you got to do is decide in between that knuckle line and the ankle, how much of an arc do you want? So if we have a foot, okay, we took a cylinder, we drew a cylinder down, we drew that cylinder's perspective expanded, and then we find volume based on that. Cool. So now we have a foot. So now, let's see. What are we drawing to make it anatomically correct? Well, first we need fingers or toes. In this case, let's draw a big toe, and then we'll draw a bunch of little toes on the side. Then the toes need a knuckle, the big knuckle in their foot. There's a big fat knuckle for each one of these in our foot that creates this little bump underneath. Okay, cool. So now I know that there's another bump right here because that's the bottom of the foot. That is literally the bone that is hitting from your ankle down. That is what's happening. So boom, right? That is the second bump. And in between here, you can decide to arch it in as much as you want or as little as you want. It's just a like medical thing. Like it literally does not matter. I don't think anyone's ever looked at a foot drawing and been like, oh my God, they didn't arch it right. Like just arch it as much as you feel like. And then at the back right here, you have your little tiny teardrop of an ankle. That's literally it, like a teardrop. Little tiny baby teardrop that connects to the back of your leg. So that back part essentially works like this. So you have your cylinder that goes down. You have that. You expand that. If you're looking at it from behind, that would be the foot. The ankle on this big cylinder, it's just a little teardrop at the bottom of your foot that splits your ankle going up. That is essentially how the back of your leg kind of works. So the teardrop that you draw for this kind of tells you where to split your calf muscle going up from your ankle. So that is another benchmark that you guys can use to be able to find where your muscles start connecting. How do you draw bodies? Well, what do you think we've been doing? We have been drawing bodies nonstop for like an hour. We've been drawing mostly the legs though. So we've been talking a little bit about more of the legs than the actual body itself, which is fair enough, if you guys were thinking about that. But in essence, I just wanted to give you guys a bunch of different cool ways to be able to draw legs. So that way you guys can not be so intimidated by them and you guys can feel like you can actually tackle a slightly more anatomical approach to them as opposed to always stylizing them. And hopefully this makes a little bit more accessible than, let's say, like having to like be taught how to draw like the muscles on top of the leg and stuff. Which is okay. Like it's just a more rigorous way of learning. And it's just, it's not for everybody. So learning simple tends to be better. Learning complicated, leave that for and after you master the simplicity of things. And then, just progress like that. So, I don't know. Should we continue? Let's continue over here. Let's just finish up this lesson over here. How to draw the toes. Well, toes, let's draw toes. Let's draw toes. So let's say you have your foot. Let's draw a foot from the front. We'll draw a foot from 3/4. And we'll draw a foot from a profile, I guess. Okay, so we have 3 different feet. We have our cylinder that goes down, blah, 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 blah. We have our cylinder at the bottom that we expand to come up with our bottom. Okay, so that's how we come up with the bottom part of our foot, by just expanding the perspective line of the basic cylinder we used. And then when we're drawing our toes, they're going to be at the front. And the toes are going to be kind of like steps. So you're going to draw your big toe coming up and creating this sort of feel to it. Okay. So you're going to have a big knuckle, and then you're going to have the fleshy part underneath. So essentially what you're drawing is one section connected by another little section connected by your big structure. So you have these 2 parts that move. They connect to your knuckle, and your knuckle connects to your bones that connect back to your foot. Okay, so essentially this is what's going on. So that's for your toe, for your big toe. And then the other toes, literally whenever you're drawing them, all you got to do is just draw a little row of like a box and then just split it. Like that's all you really need to do to draw the other ones. Like you don't really need to do much. So when you're drawing like your feet in general, like you can draw one big toe a little bit more detailed, and then the other ones can just be a big box split. Like that's literally it. Like I don't think anyone really takes the time to differentiate each individual toe. But if you did want to, you should be able to. So once you get better at learning how to draw the feet and thinking about them like hands, you can start thinking about them with 5 knuckles. And then each one of these can have their own individual movement. Remember that second bump is the cylinder going up, and then this first bump is your knuckles. So once you get to the point where you can actually finish this easy, like basic ones, then you can go in and start like playing around at first. Like start small, right? Like draw like your thumb, and then like draw all your fingers, and then maybe draw like the pinky up or something. And then like see if that looks cool. And then you can play around with that. And then get better, and then change the shape of another toe. And then get better, and then draw another toe differently. And then little by little, you're going to just do it naturally. You're not even going to think about it. It's just going to be a natural progression. When you're drawing, you're going to be like, oh, that looks too even. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's add another little elevation or something. You're just going to think about things like that often. Like you're not going to even, like it's not even going to be a thought process. It's just going to be something you do. A foot from the front would be like this. How to do hair. We will have to do that as another lesson though, because our lesson for today, unfortunately, is over, guys. No, Rod, don't leave us. We haven't gotten enough learning yet. Well, if you guys have not gotten enough of Rod Gone lessons and you guys want to learn some more, or you guys joined us late and you guys want to still catch a lesson, go to my YouTube channel. All of the good ones that I have done have been uploaded, and we have about 400 of them now. So all the lives are on YouTube. You guys can go check them out there. You guys can learn at your own discretion. And most of the lessons that I teach are from scratch. So you don't really need to have any art drawing experience in order to be able to learn something new. So make sure to check them out. Learn as much as you guys can. I would love it if you guys shared any of your drawings with me and tagged me on them in your videos, or duetted any of my videos where you guys practice those things. I love that stuff. Like literally, I live by myself, and I'm living like literally by myself 99% of the time. Whenever I hear from anybody, it makes me smile. So make sure that you guys do that if you guys do feel like sharing. And until I see you guys next time, let me leave you guys with a nice little message so that you guys go on to this weekend with a happy smile on your faces. I want you guys to, we already do these. I want you guys to go and live your life a little bit, but I want you guys to show a little bit of kindness to someone this weekend. I want, even if that means it's yourself, right? If you love yourself, that's perfectly fine. Treat yourself, be kind, be loving. I want you also to go out into the world, and I want you guys to live a little. I want you guys to enjoy a little adventure, a hike, or even just a big breath of fresh air. Do something that's going to get you out of the house or out of your routine so that you can experience something new, so that you have inspiration for something new. If you don't do anything new and you guys just do the same routine, unfortunately, you're going to get into this thing called art block, and it's going to be really hard for you guys to get out of it because it becomes a rut. So try to actively do something cool as much as you can, because as artists, we need that. So make sure to do that. I want you to go and find the person that can give you the best dad joke in the world. And I want you guys to please let them know that you need it desperately so you can smile and laugh, because I want you guys to laugh a little today. That is going to be an essential thing for you, because joy is just too important not to have it in your life. And then when it comes down to it, we are all artists. And regardless of it being a pencil, a pen, a paintbrush, a Wacom tablet, or an iPad, make sure that you guys draw at least 15 minutes today. If you guys already drew with me, you guys have met that quota. You guys don't have to worry about it. But whoever told you that you only had to draw 15 minutes, right? We all want to draw more than that. So let's make sure that we take some time to study and have dedicated learning time today. At least 15 minutes of dedicated learning every day will get you really, really far, really, really quick. So make sure to do that. Love you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another lesson. If not, actually not tomorrow. Tomorrow I have work all day. You guys will see me Sunday for a new lesson, but I'll still upload a video for you guys so you guys have something to see it. So go on to YouTube. Okay. Later, guys. Take care.